welcome to Monday's Mental Mistakes. This week is the third in a series of 3 videos about naive realism. Naive realism has 3 tenets to it, and in this video we will cover the third of these. The third tenet of naive realism is that those who disagree with us are either misinformed, stupid, or biased. That is, any disagreement with my rationally held position must be wrong. Naive realism makes us more likely to assume others are uneducated, lazy, or ideologically driven. At the same time, we're unlikely to see ourselves that way. Here's a simple example. Consider the recent cases of the deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Garner in New York, at the hands of police officers. Many people have opinions on these cases, and many others like them. And while opinions can be complex and nuanced, as a simple approximation, suppose we use a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is extremely anti-police and 10 is extremely pro-police. That is, someone who is a 1 on the scale believes that most police officers are racist, that these incidents were clear examples of white police officers deliberately murdering black people, and that the investigations into the police actions were hopelessly biased and unjust. Someone who is a 10 on the scale believes that almost no police officers are racist, that these incidents were clear examples of good cops taking appropriate actions, and that the people who died were responsible for their consequences, and that the subsequent investigations were conducted with integrity and rightfully exonerated the officers. On this scale, from 1 to 10, 3 questions. 1. Where would you place yourself? 2. Where would you place a typical protester? 3. Where would you place a typical police supporter? I have phrased all of this fairly informally, but when research has been done on similar incidents in the past in a more rigorous way, an interesting result was found. The top line shows the actual average ratings, assessed using more rigorous methods, of the 2 groups responding to a racially charged crime. In this research, the 2 positions were distinguished as conservative and liberal, with conservatives tending to favour the white perpetrators of a crime against a black victim. Liberals tended to favour the black victim. The second line here shows the average liberal estimate of what conservatives and liberals believed. The bottom line shows the average conservative estimate of what conservatives and liberals believed. The key point here is that both groups considered their ideological opponents to be more extreme in their beliefs than they actually were. In further research, this has been found to be caused by an assumption that since those people disagree with us, they must do so because they are irrationally attached to an ideology. Therefore, they're going to be extreme in their views because they are being irrational. This is naive realism. Also, note that both groups also estimated other supporters of their own position as more extreme than they are. This is caused by a similar effect, in which we recognise that even people we agree with tend to have some bias, and therefore, we conclude, they must be attached to some more extreme ideology than we are. The point that is missed in all of this is that without good evidence that we ourselves are not a typical proponent, it is actually rational to assume that those on our side are no more biased than we are, or rather, that we are as biased as they are. The principal way to counter naive realism is to always assume that we are no less biased than anyone else when dealing with a contentious issue on which we are not experts. Unless we have good reason to believe that we are less biased on this particular issue, then we probably aren't. So anyone disagreeing with us is likely to be no more biased than us. The key insight here is that we are likely to be biased, and that our bias is likely the cause of at least some of the disagreement. This goes doubly so for contentious social issues and politics. A related phenomenon that has been established in similar studies is that we also tend to see people who disagree with us as more homogeneous than they actually are. That is, because we assume they must disagree because they are wedded to some ideology, we tend to assume that they all believe mostly the same things. In reality, though, all sides of an issue tend to encompass a range of opinions, and most people are not attached to a single dogma. For example, atheists tend to see fundamentalist Christians as a monolithic demographic with identical views on many social issues. While this is somewhat true, as fundamentalist Christianity does value conformity, most research has shown that opposition to gay marriage, say, comes from people who have a range of views on religion and other social issues. That's not to say that religion in general is not a driving force in these views, but rather that we overestimate how uniform a group like Christian fundamentalists are. In conclusion, Naive realism is a fundamental, flawed belief that underlies many other cognitive biases. There are three tenets to naive realism: that our beliefs are rational, that other rational people will agree with us, and therefore anyone who disagrees is either misinformed, stupid, or biased. Until next week, may your mental mistakes be minor.